Good to have back to the show Matt Robison, writer, podcast host, political analyst who focuses on trends in demographics, psychology, policy, and economics that are shaping American politics. His work has been featured extensively in Newsweek, Alternate, and Raw Story. He spent a decade working on Capitol Hill as a legislative director and chief of staff for 3 members of Congress. Also joining us, Congressman Paul Hodes, serving 2 terms as a U.S. Congressman from New Hampshire's 2nd Congressional District. He began his legal career in New Hampshire as an assistant attorney general under then Attorney General David Sauter. Was elected to Congress in 2006, was chosen as the president of the historic 2006 freshman class. Together, they host the podcast Beyond Politics, and they're kind enough today to join us to talk about a little bit about Iowa, but as well, talk to us a little bit as well about New Hampshire and what's coming up next. Gentlemen, Congressman, thank you very much. I appreciate the time.
Sure.
I like how you separate congressman from gentleman. That's very apt.
Well, gentlemen, actually, Matt, I'm going to start with you with your Newsweek article that you just put out, because you, I think, might have been the first person to touch on this with Trump in Iowa, and that he's not this fresh-faced new candidate. He is, he's far closer to an incumbent than he is to a new person. So a 51% turnout for him is actually really low. And I don't think he should be touting the success of Iowa. I think that actually that was a really bad showing for him in Iowa.
Absolutely. Matt, for all of your Chicago and Minnesota listeners and viewers, if you woke up Tuesday morning and you started reading some of the coverage in the Washington Post, Chicago Tribune, Chicago Sun-Times, Minneapolis Star, pick your news outlet of choice. You could have gone to CNN. You could have gone anywhere. And they're all crowing about what they call the Trump romp, Trump domination, Trump crushes in Iowa. And you thought to yourself, wait, really? Am I taking crazy pills? You are not alone. I was on text chains with former members of Congress and chiefs of staff like me and politicos and political scientists and professors. And we're all saying to ourselves, wait, I thought I was the only one. Yes, Matt, you're right. 2/3 of Republican caucus goers in Iowa told pollsters on their way into the caucus that they thought that Donald Trump was the legitimate president of the United States. In their mind, he's the incumbent. So the incumbent president of the United States, in their mind, gets half. And not only that, he could only motivate 8% of the 700,000 odd registered Republicans, and I do mean odd, in Iowa to show up. Half of them he inspired to vote for him. The other half he inspired to vote against him. And somehow our stenographic, toadying, easily cajoled media all bands together and says, a crushing major win. Are you kidding me? And so I was compelled to write this up in Newsweek.
Well, go ahead, Paul.
He got 4% of Iowa's registered Republicans. He got 4%. We were on somebody else's show today, and they tried to make an excuse. They said, "Well, it was really cold." I said, "Come on, come on."
Things were terrible in there.
This is the Midwest. I mean, they play football in -7 degrees. They can put on their overcoats and boots. They can get in their cars. They can drive to the nice heated basements and gyms and get out the vote if they're really enthusiastic. 4% of Iowa's Republicans were enthusiastic enough to give the great orange Cheeto pig a romping victory.
Well, I went back and looked. About the most closest we could find recently was Carter in 1980, because he had Ted Kennedy challenging him. And Carter still got 59% of the vote and more votes than Trump did. But at the same time, the narrative off that was this massively divided Democratic Party. Oh, how are they ever going to come together? Which played a role in 1980 in Reagan's election. The way that it's portrayed now, I mean, and Trump's showing was worse. Now, once again, not exactly the same equal comparison, not an incumbent, as close to an incumbent as you can get, and yet they act as if him only getting basically half of the votes that showed up is somehow this bellwether of America.
You know what really frosts me while we're talking about the weather, Matt? It's the entire look. You're a fan. You know that I do a video channel with your frequent guest, Cliff Schechter, who's an alpha liberal like you, right? Like no bones about it. And, he loves to do takedowns on the media. I do too. It's fun. But in this case, this stuff really matters because we're fresh off of polls in New Hampshire showing that both Haley and Trump have gained in standing in New Hampshire since the Iowa caucus, but it's for very different reasons. What the polls are showing is that Haley has gained because Chris Christie dropped out and she's inherited most of his supporters. Trump has also gained an equal amount, but what his people are telling pollsters is, well, we saw how he did in Iowa, meaning you read the media narrative about it and you figured, oh, okay, so Trump is gaining political support. He's gaining votes. He's gaining momentum because of the media narrative. And it's scandalous in a way, because here's an example of how the media does this, right? You're a member of the media. Shame on you, McNeil. Here's an example of how they do this. ABC News does an article, right, where they talk about their entrance polls, and they deliver themselves of the following tangled English sentence. By a split of 63% to 32%, respondents to the entrance poll say they'd consider Trump fit for office despite a conviction. So let's unpack that, my friends. They are leading with the idea of, hey, 63% say that they would consider him fit for office. This is a strong point, even if he is convicted of any of the 91 felony counts pending against him. Okay, let's invert this for a second. One third of the most MAGA heartland Republicans available on planet Earth are saying, if he gets convicted, we will drop him. We will fold on him faster than Superman on laundry day. And they somehow bury this nugget 7 paragraphs deep in their analysis, and they give it backwards. This is the problem.
So why are they doing it? Why are we having redux of 2016 when the media distinguished themselves by never saying anything about Trump that really gave anybody a glimmer of a chance to think about who they were electing? Why are they doing it? Do they want the coronation, or do they prefer a horse race? What is it?
I think it's the money thing. I really do. I think they're so much business. Network back in 1976 was way ahead of everyone on this, saw where this is all going. And it's basically that they don't want a blowout victory, because a blowout victory means not enough money, and they want that cash. But I also think the purged newsrooms, where they're basically scrambling to try to cover news, it's just too easy to print the talking points from a political party. Now, if we can, I want to step off into New Hampshire. And Congressman, it's an absolute privilege to chat with you. Thank you very much. I really am excited to have you here, because you will be able to give us a really good of what things are like on the ground. What is New Hampshire? Give us what is the difference between Iowa and New Hampshire? How do things change for the race as it goes there?
Well, look, everybody in New Hampshire thinks they are the political expert and the kind of pundit that Matt Robison actually is. But everybody in New Hampshire would be able to fill you with opinions and perspective and thoughts and their history. And they would tell you about the time in 1988 when I had this candidate or that candidate in my living room. And then I chalked up that candidate at the coffee shop. And then I went over to the library and I saw that candidate. And in fact, it's true, because in New Hampshire, you do get to meet the candidates. Everybody's an hour or two away. But the media, again, has this view of New Hampshire as this quaint little backwater populated by hobbits, where they come out with their furry feet, and
New Hampshire.
New Hampshire. And every 4 years, we conduct this quaint little ritual. Well, so folks in New Hampshire are pretty politically savvy, because remember this, Matt, you got a population of 1.3 million people. You got 400 state legislators, 400 who all get paid $100 a year. So politics is like in the blood. It's a state sport, and every 2 years everybody runs. So there's always a campaign going on. In New Hampshire, nobody knows, are you running for Congress? Are you running for the state legislature? I mean, it doesn't matter. You're going to Concord, you're going to Washington, you're all a bunch of crooks anyway. What does it matter? There's a strong libertarian bent here. In fact, there was a project to take over New Hampshire politics by libertarians, which to some degree has been successful. But also the makeup here is pretty interesting. 30% Dems, 30% Arms, 40% independents. And one of the defining characteristics that we'll be seeing is that those 40% undeclared voters can take either a Republican ballot or a Democratic ballot during the primary. And right now, we are thinking that a lot of those undeclared voters are going to be taking a Republican ballot because they are really interested in what's going on. And there's a certain cadre of those undeclareds who may ultimately end up voting for Democrats, but here could say, we want to be the granite bulwark that stops the great orange Cheeto on his march to dictatorship. We're going to go in and vote for Nikki Haley. Well, she's crazy, but at least she's not Trump crazy.
Well, and Matt, do you think in New Hampshire, I mean, because here's the problem that Iowa exposed, is there's just enough Republicans in Trump's camp to doom them, and that they're going to be stuck with this guy, and it's going to be toxic down the line. But is that true in New Hampshire, Matt? Do you think that there is enough wiggle room that we might actually see an upset here, that, or at least close enough to where it makes these next contest, Nevada, South Carolina, stuff like that, makes them more interesting?
Not among Republicans, but I'll share a fun party trick with all your listeners and viewers, okay? If you want to sound smart at a party over the next few days, if the conversation turns to politics, here's what you do, okay? You point out what Paul just said. And, there's 40% are independents. We call them undeclareds in New Hampshire for no reason. And what polling shows us is that Trump is winning registered Republicans by about 30 points, but Haley is winning registered undeclareds by about 30 points. So when the conversation turns to, will Trump maybe lose? Will Haley win? And they start talking about polls. Here's what you do to sound really smart. You say, well, it all depends in this poll on how the pollster decides to weight the number of independents and undeclareds versus Republicans, because that's actually true.
Yeah.
Basically, pollsters make assumptions, right? They have to make guesses about who's going to show up. There's no written in stone rule for who's going to show up to these things. And so they make guesses. We're actually having the number one pollster in New Hampshire. He runs the CNN poll. He's on our show on Beyond Politics tomorrow. We're going to talk about this. So they make guesses. The ones that are guessing that more Republicans than undeclareds are going to show up are going to show that Trump is going to run away with this. The ones who are guessing, actually, we may get an equal number or more undeclareds, they're going to show Haley very competitive. So when you see polls, you're at a cocktail party, say, oh, see that result, they oversampled undeclareds, and you'll sound like a genius, at least to nerds.